Hello, welcome to GRUR, another edition of Geography Revision Rocks. Before we start though, where do fish keep their money? In a riverbank. So behind me there's some images of meanders, and you can also pick out an oxbow lake up there. So what do we need to know about these landforms? Well, firstly we need to know that meanders are a characteristic of the middle course of a river. We also need to know that on the outside bend of a meander we can get a river cliff, and on the inside bend of a meander we can get a river beach or a slip-off slope. But what else do we need to know, and how are we going to apply our knowledge in our exam? Well, there are several questions that we might be asked, and just coming up now are some example questions that you might be asked. So there are different types of questions. For example, describe and explain the formation of a meander. Describe how a meander may develop over time. Explain how an oxbow lake is formed. So, with all formation questions, as I said before, I think it's a really good idea in the exam, even if they don't ask, to draw simple diagrams to show that sequence. Remember, that's the order things happen in. So what I'm going to do is, firstly, I'm going to show you how to draw a couple of simple diagrams and a couple of simple sentences that can help explain how a meander is formed. And then once I've done that, I'm then going to show you how that meander can develop over time and how it can create an oxbow lake. So for a meander to form, there's a couple of things that we need to be aware of, particularly if we want the highest marks. As we get to the middle course of the river, the gradient decreases. And because the gradient decreases, we then get greater lateral erosion. That's erosion from side to side. So when we get that side to side erosion, it means that we end up getting some erosion on the outside bend of the river and deposition on the inside bend of the river. So if we wanted to draw a simple diagram, we would start off with a simple bend in our river. And then we want to show the examiner that we've got erosion on the outside. We've got deposition on the inside. Then we show again that on the outside bend we get erosion, and on the inside bend we get deposition. I think in the exam you would probably want to do a little key and to show that that's erosion, and even write it, erosion, and this is deposition. And this would take you, I'm drawing this quite slowly, but it wouldn't take you too long to do that and to write that erosion and deposition in. So obviously when we're talking about why meanders form, we need to explain why there's erosion on the outside bend. And the reason there's erosion on the outside bend is because that's where the greatest velocity is. If we want really high marks, we talk about something called the centripetal force. So the river literally gets thrown around the outside bend. So that's where all our erosion is happening. And remember, we include a key term, so we would talk about hydraulic action. So that's our first diagram. Our second diagram, we'd want to show that the river is getting more bendy, or a posh word for saying that is more sinuous. So because this erosion is happening there, the outside bend is becoming more bendy. So it's almost that the river is coming like this. It's pushing out there, and we've got our deposition on the inside here. So rather than giving a load of dotted lines to the examiner and becoming really, really messy, we could simply just draw a slightly greater bend, like that. And then we'd show where the erosion is and where the deposition is. And again, just number it, number 2. So obviously I've spoken there, you might consider that I waffled then, and if we wrote everything down then we'd run out of time. So we want to simplify our sentences. So for diagram number 1, I'd want to write something like erosion by hydraulic action. And remember, we've got the key word hydraulic action there. It allows us to access greater marks. Occurs on the outside bend of the river. This is because the river has more energy on the outside. Remember, I've included the word because, especially if it's an explain question. On the outside, a river cliff is formed. So that can go with the first diagram. The other thing we also want to add to that is deposition occurs on the inside bend because the river has less energy. On the inside bend, a river beach or a slip-off slope is formed. The second diagram, we then add another simplified sentences. Over time, the process repeats and the meander gets more sinuous. So those 3 sentences we've just written there is enough for a formation of a meander. However, if we were a question asked as how does a meander develop over time, or how has an oxbow lake formed, then we need to add a little bit more. Still say this stuff, still talk about the erosion on the outside and deposition on the inside, but you just need to take it one step further. So the next diagram I would draw is going to show the river in a really bendy fashion. It's also going to show us that the neck of the meander, that's this bit here between the 2 bends, is really close together. But just like our other diagrams, I think it's really good to add in where the erosion is and deposition. So that's our 3rd diagram. So our 4th diagram, we need to show how the river has broken through the neck of the meander and leaves that oxbow lake. And again, we'll number it, and you'll notice that on this bit of paper it looks like I'm running out of room, but because I've numbered it, the examiner will be able to see that sequence, that order of things happen if something similar happened to you in your exam. So the 4th diagram, we'd want to draw something like this, just to show where the oxbow lake is. So the old path of the river went like this, and the neck of the meander was really, really close, so it kind of here and here. And then the flood event broke through, and when the floodwaters receded, we had our deposition here and here, and then the oxbow lake got formed. So again, I spoke for quite a while then, didn't I, about the erosion and the deposition. However, these next 3 sentences explain how the oxbow lake is formed really, really easily. So number 3 accompanies diagram 3, so it says, with more erosion by hydraulic action, again key term, the neck of the meander gets closer together. And then we can put number 4 for diagram 4. There is then a flood event and the neck breaks through. When the floodwater recedes, sediment is deposited and blocks off the old course of the river, creating an oxbow lake. Right, job done, maximum marks. Thank you for listening to another edition of GRUR Geography Revision Rock. Hello, come in. Oh, hi Mr. Armstrong.
Hi Mr. Spencer.
Do you know what? You knocking at the door just reminded me of something. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Wendy.
Wendy who?
Wendy River bends, you get a meander. See you next time.